opposition, Rishi Sunak.
Mr. Speaker, tomorrow the government will publish their anticipated changes to employment law. Given the weekend's events, when did the Prime Minister first become a convert to fire and rehire?
I'm very pleased and proud that tomorrow we will publish the bill which will be the biggest upgrade of workers' rights in a generation. And that'll do two things, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, it will give people basic dignity at work. And secondly, it will help grow our economy, something that the last government absolutely failed on for 14 long years.
The opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, when he talks about security at work, once again, it's one rule for him and another rule for everyone else. Yeah. But I know that not everything or everyone has survived his first 100 days in government. So can he confirm that when he promised not to raise income tax, national insurance or VAT, that commitment applies to both employer and employee national insurance contributions?
Mr. Speaker, as he well knows, I'm not going to get drawn on decisions that will be set out. We made an absolute commitment in relation to not raising tax on working people. He, of course, was the expert's expert on raising taxes. And what did we get in return for it? We got a broken economy, broken public services, and a £22 billion black hole in the economy. We're here to stabilise the economy, and we will do so.
Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think even Lord Alli is buying any of that nonsense. But I'm not asking, Mr. Speaker. I'm not asking about the budget. I'm not asking about the budget. I'm asking specifically. I'm asking specifically about the promise he made to the British people. So let me ask him again, just to clarify his own promise. Does his commitment not to raise national insurance apply to both employee and employer national insurance contributions?
We set out our promises in our manifesto. We returned with a huge majority to change the country for the better, and I stick to my promises in the manifesto. But I notice it's question 3, and it hasn't yet welcomed the investment into this country. We've had in recent months £8 billion from Amazon for jobs across the country, £10 billion from Blackstone's jobs across the North East, £22 billion on carbon capture jobs in the North East and the North West, £500 million, Mr. Speaker, for UK buses in Northern Ireland. While we're investing in our economy, what are they doing? They're arguing about whether to scrap maternity pay.
Leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy to welcome investments that this government negotiated, but when it comes to his answer on tax, Mr. Speaker, businesses across the country would have found his answer just about as reassuring as Sue Gray did when he promised to protect her job, Mr. Speaker. So let me turn. It's no wonder confidence is plummeting on his watch, which he didn't mention. But turning to another commitment, before the election, his Chancellor said changing the debt target in the fiscal rules would be tantamount to fiddling the figures. Does he still agree with the Chancellor?
Prime Minister.
This is literally the man who was in charge of the economy. 14 years they crashed the economy. And what did they leave? A £22 billion black hole in the economy. Unlike them, we won't walk past it, we will fix it, and it's only because we're stabilising the economy that we are getting the investment into this country. But I still notice he hasn't really talked about that investment. We're powering ahead with clean British energy. We're changing the rules to build 1.5 million homes and returning railways to public ownership. And they've got nothing to say about any of this.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, on debt, we left them the second lowest debt in the G7, Mr. Speaker. And as the Institute of Fiscal Studies have said, with
Order. I will hear the Leader of the Opposition, Rishi Sunak.
Listen, Mr. Speaker, as the Institute of Fiscal Studies have said, it's hard to escape the suspicion that the government is attracted to this change because it would allow for significantly more borrowing. Now, his Chancellor previously said that this change, and I quote her words, would be fiddling the figures. So it is a simple question: does he still agree with the Chancellor?
Prime Minister.
I see it's back to his old script. They've never had it so good. That didn't work so well at the election fund. Might be time to change that. I'm not going to get drawn on issues for the budget, just as he wouldn't when he was standing at this dispatch box. But meanwhile, we're investing, we're building the NHS fit for the future, back on its feet, better opportunities for young people and protections at work. After 14 years of Tory failure, we're giving the country its future back. And that's the difference that Labour delivers.
Mr. Speaker, it is clear he's opened the door to raising employer national insurance contributions, including on pensions, and fiddling the figures that he can borrow more. And he talks about what he's achieved. Well, economic confidence is plummeting, growth is now stalling, and the UK's borrowing costs are rising on his watch, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, can I close on another important topic? Because yesterday's intervention from the head of MI5 will have been sobering for the whole House, and not least his warning that Britain faces the most complex and interconnected threats in our country's history. Now, I know the Prime Minister will agree with me that we all owe our security services a debt of gratitude for what they do to keep us safe. But can the Prime Minister confirm that the forthcoming terrorism bill will give our security services the powers they need to tackle evolving threats? And I can assure him of our constructive support on these vital questions of national security in the same spirit that he provided that support to me.
Prime Minister.
Well, I can confirm that we will give the security forces and services the powers that they need, and I hope that is a shared objective across the House. They do an incredibly important job for us. But he talks about the economy. It's a real shame the party opposite can't simply... Well, he did at the beginning of his question a moment ago. Listen on. It's a shame they can't celebrate Britain's success under this government. Of course we've got to take tough decisions. But when investment is pouring in, as it has been in recent weeks, when the NHS strikes are coming to an end, when houses are getting built, we're delivering the biggest upgrade of workers' rights in a generation. It's time for them to accept that we're fixing the foundations. So whilst they fight amongst themselves in the comfort zone of unfunded promises, threatening to scrap the minimum wage, we're going to get on with the job of clearing up the mess that they made and making a better country that people are crying out for.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Across this House, we all agree that we need to get our economy growing strongly again so we can improve people's lives and raise the money for our public services. Liberal Democrats believe that one of the best ways of doing that is to improve our relationship with our European neighbours on things like trade, and I welcome the fact that the Prime Minister has made this a priority in his first few weeks. But what I just don't understand is that he's ruled out negotiating a youth mobility scheme with our European partners. This could be so good for young people, for businesses, and for re-establishing that relationship. So will he reconsider this?
Prime Minister.
Well, he's right. We do need a better deal with the EU than the bad deal we got under the last government. And that's why I was very pleased to meet the President of the Commission last week to talk about how we can improve on the deal. In our manifesto, we had clear red lines about the single market, customs union, freedom of movement, and we will negotiate with those red lines in place.
Davey.
Well, I'm disappointed about the youth mobility scheme. Maybe we can come back to that. But he's right to say one of the many problems for our economy coming from the dreadful Brexit deal was the red tape that's been put on businesses. Now, there are many examples of that, Mr. Speaker, but a new example came to me earlier this week, and it affects fishermen in the Falklands, who are otherwise having to pay huge amounts in tariffs to be able to sell their produce into the European market or sail under a Spanish flag. So when the Prime Minister renegotiates the trade deal, can you remember the overseas territories? And ensure that British citizens fishing off the Falklands can sail proudly under the Union Jack?
Prime Minister.
My uncle nearly lost his life when his ship was torpedoed defending the Falklands. They are British and they will remain British. And sovereignty in Gibraltar is equally not to be negotiated. Of course, we will do everything we can to make it easier for all businesses to trade more freely so that we can grow our economy. I'm very, very clear about the Falklands. It's personal to me.